Hi Chris, how are you?
Good evening, Rod. I'm very well. Here we are on, Monday the 8th of July. I'm straight in this time and it's episode 128.
That's very good. I'm glad that we're both completely on the ball and there'll be no mistakes in this podcast.
I think we should maybe have a disclaimer. There may be some mistakes in this podcast.
Mistakes may be made in the course of this podcast. Hopefully not too many factual ones, and we'll apologise for those if we do. How's your weather?
Soggy. We should change the name of the podcast to "We Are Only Human," and then that would allow us to have mistakes. And in the current AI trend, might not be a bad name for a podcast.
I don't know. I think instead of "Wake from Sleep," "I Want to Sleep" should be the name of this one.
Yeah, I think so. We're both a bit tired. You've had a long day travelling. I went to Silverstone at the weekend and spent 4 days at Silverstone, which I enjoyed, but I'm very tired now because you're camping in a wet field. We did have a camper van, which was a treat, but it's still quite tiring, all the walking, sleeping in a very confined space. I'm feeling tired and I think my throat's going a little, so I apologise already.
I guess it's loud with all the cars whizzing about, huh?
Cars, music. We had Pete Tong. Stormzy was there. I didn't see Stormzy, sadly, because it was absolutely tipping it down. And the Kings of Leon were there, but sadly I didn't see them because I didn't have tickets for the Thursday night. I'd love to have seen the Kings of Leon, because the last time I saw them was about 18 years ago with you in Cardiff.
Yeah, that was a while ago. That was the day, what was it called? Live 12 or the sort of Live Aid follow-up thing was on at the same time?
I can't remember, but you and I I definitely had a lot less children than I have now. I don't know about you.
I can't remember that far back, frankly.
No, I can't remember either.
Well, I think we should move on because we're just very old.
We are very old. There you go. Anyway, so that was my weekend done. Should we dive straight into follow-up?
Let's dive straight into follow-up. And we don't have that many stories. You can tell, the summer is upon us and there's not that much going on. Talking before the show, and Chris was hoping for a little bit of iOS 18 Beta 3 goodness to happen, but that hasn't happened. And we'll just do some follow-up. So straight off, Apple has approved a third-party marketplace. This one was long foretold. This is Epic Games have finally had their marketplace approved by Apple. Not without controversy, it would seem. I think Epic had to appeal to the EU, or said they were going to appeal to the EU, because Apple initially refused to notarize it because of similarities in their buttons to Apple's buttons. The Get app is in the same place as in Apple's App Store, and this just feels ridiculously petty to me.
It does, doesn't it? Surely they just want to let this one through because, and I guess they maybe want to go, we're letting it through, but advisory, kind of like when you get your MOT done, you may want to change this in the future because it's a bit too much like ours if you're really going to be that petty.
I mean, the thing is that you can understand Apple on some level might be going, it looks too similar to our store. Maybe people will confuse it for the actual Apple store with the placement of our buttons and everything. At the same time, anybody who's gone through the steps of 15 things to get one of these app marketplaces installed absolutely knows they are. And they also know, because they've installed the Epic thing, that they're doing it for Fortnite or they're doing it for something like that, which you don't get on the Apple App Store. So this is sour grapes, I think.
Agreed, sour grapes. And I was trying to explain, my kids couldn't understand why Fortnite wasn't on the App Store. So I think sour grapes, if somebody's gone to the effort of doing this, they're doing it for a reason. Yeah,
and Epic are quite litigious. Apple seem quite happy to have that ongoing litigation with companies like this, but Epic aren't going to mess about. They're going to complain, they're going to sue, they're going to do everything that they possibly can. And I don't think Epic are entirely the best company in the world either, let's face it. They've got their own problems, but Apple are just throwing up every single barrier, including petty things like this, to get in their way. And I wonder what will happen next as part of the notarization stuff that we talked about last week. I got to think that they'll submit Fortnite or something for their marketplace, and Apple won't allow it.
You can see it now, can't you? It's like playing out in slow motion.
Very much so. So we'll get well done. Hopefully in the EU you'll be able to play Fortnite on your devices again. I do remember when Fortnite was on the iPad. It dropped just when I was on holiday in Ireland, and we were at the Cliffs of Moher on west coast of Ireland. I watched two kids playing Fortnite on their cellular iPads walking along the path for the Cliffs of Moher, and I thought, this isn't clever.
That's not good, is it?
Well, I mean,
were they your kids?
They weren't my kids. I wouldn't pay for cellular. I very rarely buy a cellular iPad.
No, cellular iPad's the best show in town.
Yeah, and without getting in, it should really be in the Mac by now as well.
I don't disagree with that statement. I'm amazed it's not in the Vision Pro, to be fair, before the Mac.
Just mind-boggling. Anyway, moving along.
Should we have a bet on that?
Cellular coming to the Mac or Cellular coming to the Vision Pro?
Yeah, which one gets cellular first, Vision Pro or Mac?
Never the Vision Pro. Never, ever, ever.
You can see it happening, can't you?
No, I think they'll kill the Vision Pro before they put a cellular in it.
No, they won't. They keep iterating. We'll all have one in a couple of years.
When are you actually going to be able to get demos?
I did think about that earlier. Actually, I don't know because they're out now, aren't they? That's how in tune we are. Which
Maybe.
is rare. I'm normally all over this.
Yeah, it's not lighting me on fire with passion, I must say. I should make more of an effort. I've got a story involving Apple in the main show, so maybe we could cover it again then. But I was in Liverpool, and a colleague of mine went to the App Store. His phone was entirely dead. His touchscreen seemed to be entirely dead. And he went to Apple to see if they could do anything. iPhone 11. And they couldn't. And he reported back there were no Vision Pros on sale or on display in that App Store, in that Apple Store. So
12th of July.
12th of July. That's only 4 days away.
End of the week. So that's when you can actually have one. They're still available to pre-order. And then I guess from the 12th of July, you'll be able to go and try them out in the shop. That would be my guess.
Have not pre-ordered mine.
Me neither, because I quite like the idea of keeping £3,500 in my pocket right now. I was really expecting a price drop, if I'm honest. To be fair to Apple, you can spread the cost over 36 months at an APR of 14.9%.
That's a very high APR, and you could also buy your lovely iPad and possibly a Mac Studio for that amount of money.
You could definitely get a lower spec version of my iPad and a Mac Studio for that, 100%.
So Mac Studio is £2,099. How much was your the version of your iPad without any of the accessories?
More than that.
All right, but it's less than £1,500 just for an iPad Pro, right?
Yeah, if you just bought a normal iPad Pro, you'd be well away.
Yeah, that's two really good devices. You might even
100%.
have enough money left over for a £200 monitor to look at everything on.
Completely agree. So that would be a better use of money, unless there is something you're going to use it for, or you've got $3,500 just burning a hole in your pocket.
Buy 2 iPad Pros for that money and rubber band them to your face. I mean, honestly, there's your left and right eye at high resolution.
If I could do that, I would just leave one in here tethered the whole time, so I don't have to keep unplugging it and taking it with me. Right,
We've gone off on a tangent, yeah. Next story, OpenAI's ChatGPT Mac app has been storing conversations in plain text. This caused a bit of a blow-up, I think, that, when you're downloaded OpenAI's app and you interact with it on your computer, a log was stored on your computer of that free text stuff. On one level, I get it. You don't want a conversation you're having with anything to be stored on your computer. At the same time, I bet if I went looking through the email on my Mac, if I used the Mac Mail app, the .eml files are probably text.
Yeah, I'm a bit mixed on this one. It's not a great look in the era of security, but equally, is it that bad a thing? I don't know. I mean, if you're chatting to OpenAI and you're not paying them any money, it's all you're just adding to the model anyway. But so I'm a bit mixed on it. I think though, you'd expect certain things to be built in from the outset, though, wouldn't you? That especially now. But however, they're iterating so quickly, you've got to imagine they've got to cut some corners somewhere.
Again, I agree with you. I think maybe a little bit of sandboxing around this would be good. It sets your store for the future. If you chat with ChatGPT in a more significant way, as you just said, you're sending them all this stuff anyway, so they're getting that. This is more malicious actor, I guess, if they can see the contents of what you've been putting into these files. I'm not going to make any judgments about how malicious an actor OpenAI is, but I think it's in a post-recall world where that was storing everything that happened on your computer. You think maybe companies would be a little more cautious about this?
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. I think they should be more cautious, and if you're trying to win hearts and minds of people, you know, because people are against AI, so you'd have thought you'd be doing everything right. So, yeah, it's interesting. It's just not a great way to build your app, is it? Storing anything in plain text anymore.
No.
Encryption is relatively processor free. In the old days, I remember there were certain things we'd encrypt and certain things we wouldn't, because there was a cost to doing it, you know, transmitting over the network, etc. But we're not in that world anymore. That's literally gone.
Yeah, it's table stakes these days, isn't it? And in fact, I don't even know, is it turned on by default, File Vault?
I don't know. I do have File Vault turned on because I think there's zero cost to me having it turned on. but I don't know if it's a default action or not.
So file vault is the encryption of your hard disk where you put in an additional key. Sorry, I didn't call it, that's old, me looking old there. Hard disk, the SSD on your Mac, it automatically encrypted. I turned it on when I had disks that could be removed from Macs. I haven't bothered since, which is probably the wrong thing to do because I was more worried about a physical person getting hold of my computer and taking it out and being able to read what was on it than I was for an online attacker getting it. But I guess it may add an additional security step for an online attacker too.
Yeah, I guess I kind of think about it. What happens if somebody actually stole the bit of hardware? So that's kind of why I do it. If they actually stole my laptop, does it? I don't know. I'm just about to embrace it. It's not like I keep a huge amount on my Mac, but it is obviously linked to my iCloud world and my 1Password world, and therefore everything. So I turn it on, but I don't need any more performance. I think I'm a light Mac user.
Fair enough. Next story, getting back to notarization. Jason Snell had a little post on his Zeppelin flights, Mastodon, about how there seemed to be a change to notarization in Sequoia. And as I was writing this story down, I realized I don't know how to spell Sequoia, and I'm not entirely sure how to say Sequoia either. But this is the next version of macOS in beta. When he went to open the DMG that he downloaded, there was a rule change. He was only given the option, Apple is not able to verify this is free from malware and could harm your Mac or compromise your privacy. Don't open this unless it's from a trustworthy source. Move to trash, open anyway. Done. And then he had to go back into settings again and say, no, I want to open this anyway, which is the way it always went. The second time he did it, it apparently didn't prompt for this, which is fine. You've obviously pushed the button to say, I'm happy with this, just continue. But it's slightly odd at a time when Apple might be under a bit of scrutiny for notarization. I wonder if this will make it into the next beta.
Yeah, I'd be curious, won't it, to see what they're doing there. I guess I don't install much on my Mac that isn't notarized, so I don't really see this. I can see why they've done it. I think it is a good, just precautionary step, but they're making it harder and harder, aren't they? I think they'd already done enough.
Yeah, all of this just points to me about why the hell are they going on about the iPhone? If you've got this level of stuff on the Mac, and the Mac has worked like this for a long time since they changed this, where you get the warning, you have to go and do something somewhere else, and then you still insist on installing it. Here be dragons. If they'd just done this on the phone and the iPad, we would not be in half the trouble, or Apple would not be in half the trouble that they're in now.
Agreed. And they haven't even told us when we may get any of this functionality on the phone and the iPad, which I think is more annoying. Like the Epic Store we just talked about, we're not going to get that. There's no route in sight for us to get that.
No. And last story, and I should probably have grouped this together with the OpenAI thing we talked about a minute ago. Phil Schiller has been appointed as an observer on the OpenAI board. That's quite interesting. They're a VC-funded company that has raised lots of money from elsewhere, including from Microsoft. Microsoft apparently don't sit on the board. I can't remember that, actually. I said that, but now I'm a bit unsure. Following the almost ousting of the chair last time, maybe they did have a more formal position on the board.
Yeah, I think some stuff's changed there. But it's interesting it's Phil Schiller, because he's retired. He's an Apple fellow, so he's kind of an observer at Apple. I know he was in the recent WWDC video, which was quite a nice throwback for a lot of us. Interesting that it's him and not a more current exec. So I thought it was just an odd choice. I think having somebody on the board makes an observer on the board. I'm guessing they've got no voting rights. I guess they get involved in conversation, but they're not there to make decisions or steer direction, I guess. But, I think it makes sense for Apple to do it, but I think the person's wrong.
In the article, they also say this puts Apple on a par with Microsoft, who are also observers on the board. So, okay. Is that just to take back to your company about what decisions are being made within there? That's probably a good thing, but wouldn't you just then have a board meeting without some of the board if you want to talk about dodgy stuff? And as we've already talked about, they don't always keep minutes.
Yeah, so American companies famously don't usually keep a lot of minutes, unlike British companies where they keep all the minutes because it's just different cultures. I guess what it's designed to do, though, is it's a good mark of transparency, isn't it? It makes sense. However, you're right. Are they now just going to have pre-board meetings with the actual board, and then they're going to have the public board meetings with the observers in? So it seems a bit odd, but I think it all makes sense.
Okay. Again,
real-time follow-up, though. Beta 3 is landed.
Oh, there you go. And you're already downloading it for your phone, are you?
Yeah, why not?
iPad on the go as well?
We'll be shortly when we move on to the next section.
Any hints about anything new that's dropping in Beta 3? Are we getting any cool AI stuff? Or?
I can't imagine it, but I would imagine this one will become the public beta. And what it will probably do once the public beta out, is switch onto that channel at some point, because I don't know whether there's less logging or anything, but I normally move over because you get to a point where the developer one comes up one day and the public one the next day. I can wait a day now. I don't think this one is buggy enough. I'm not waiting for them to fix anything major. So there you go. I would imagine maybe a couple of weeks' time we might have the public beta.
Is this the place to have a quick whinge about the beta?
Yeah, go for
Very
it.
quick. Very quick.
Up.
I don't like the notification center. I don't like the new multi-page notification center. As I try and swipe through it, I find it very inconsistent. It might be a beta thing, whether you're going to swipe through it, whether you're going to hit a control. There seems to be something off about the touch targets on it for me. And I've got the best, fastest phone, which is going to support all of the things, but I got to say I'm slightly struggling with it.
I think you might have said control center, but I heard notification center. But you did say that. I love it, and the only thing I love about it is I can stuff a load of things that I normally have as widgets. For me, they're all under the home one. I put all my home stuff there, so I can open my blinds, turn my lights on, and it's always there. I think that's neat. The music one, I wouldn't mind just to turn that off. Frankly, my muscle memory hasn't worked to ever use that. But no, I actually quite like it, and I like you can have more pages of them, which I haven't tried yet. I think on the whole it's a win, but I think you're right. There's probably some practicalities still to get used to. I also like they've included a power button, but why don't they just give you an option to reboot? Why is it either turn it off or cancel? Why can't I have turn it off or reboot? They have it on the Apple TV to reboot it. I'm sure they could put it on our iDevices as well.
I agree. Should we do some news?
Let's do some news.
So first story, Microsoft is apparently, this is from the Register, Microsoft is apparently going to shut all of the stores in China. So all the Microsoft stores in China have experienced a slump in Surface sales, as the supposition, and people are moving online. That's it. That's the end of Microsoft stores in China. And I got to think, and you and I have talked about this before, every time I walk past a Microsoft store, there's not a lot going on in there.
There's not a lot going on in there, but they've just announced all the new ChatGPT stuff. They've just announced their Copilot laptops and the Copilot Plus stuff, and that surely now's the time to have a store in a physical shop window. Reading that article though, they're still keeping some around the world in key locations, but they've not followed Apple at all. And I guess they've got a lot less to put in them because they don't make their own accessories anymore. They jettisoned a bit of that business, didn't they? We spoke about that about 6 months ago. So it's interesting, but why they just shut them in China? If they're not working, should we shut them everywhere?
I suspect Chinese buyers probably have a lot more choice in terms of laptops to hand from most manufacturers. Make them there. I know that this first wave of Copilot Plus laptops, Dell have them, Microsoft have them in the forms of the Surface. I think Asus have some, and there's a couple of others as well. But it's very unproven, and my reviews I've watched of the new Copilot Plus laptops have been good battery life, slightly lackluster in all sorts of ways. I don't know if you've been following this.
No, but your summarisation is fair. We were talking about getting one in to the company where I work because we're obviously interested in the battery life would be amazing, the performance, but obviously there's concerns about compatibility with other apps, and we'd like to test that out firsthand because I think you only really know when you try and use it all day, every day. That's how you really test it and dog food it.
Yeah.
But I'm not surprised what you said.
Yeah, I mean, I think unless you're sort of gaming or a heavy... Photoshop is compatible but slower, I dread, whereas some other things most things are fine, and if all you're doing is browsing, light emailing, the usual things we talk about with doing it, then you're going to get stellar battery life with them. There does seem to be the odd issue. The Prism sort of, I want to say translation tool, but it's not, like Rosetta 2 was for Macs, that's meant to convert the ARM code to Intel code, or AMD x86 code, I should say, to be specific. Isn't as good as Rosetta in that some things are absolutely struggling. And you see the same on the Mac. When you can emulate these games using Game Porting Toolkit, things with low-level kernel protection, games generally, to make sure cheaters can't get at things easily, they're always what cause the problem, and it's exactly the same with these Prism, these Surface Plus laptops. Yeah,
I think our concerns at work are, are there going to be some screens in Office that don't work with it because obviously Office is huge and there's probably screens in Word that have never been touched, and then we run a lot of AutoCAD. I don't know what that would be like. I think you probably want to wait 6-12 months before you really start looking into it, I think, as a big corporate.
Yeah, I did see a story today about if you ask Samsung why some app isn't working, they point you at some third-party website to say what apps are now compatible with it, and that's less than ideal. You want Microsoft to be keeping hold of that. I know Apple didn't, but then Apple supported all their apps out the gate. So,
And Rosetta 2 and Rosetta 1, to be fair, was an amazing feat of engineering. As in, it was fairly problematic free.
Yeah, that's fair. Staying on Microsoft and revisiting China briefly, that all Microsoft staff in China must use iPhone for authentication, not Android phones. This is a weird story.
Is it linked with the one above?
Could be.
Because that's what I thought when I saw it. I was like, we've got two China stories, both relate to Microsoft. Bit odd. This is a weird one because obviously Windows PCs play nicer with Android. You can link your Android phone to your Windows account on your desktop/laptop. So I'm surprised by this because Microsoft seems to be giving Android a bit more love as a corporate worldwide, with the apps and with linking it with Windows. And yet here we are going, right, all you staff, you're now going to get an iPhone. Interesting.
Well, remember Microsoft had an Android phone briefly. It was a Duo that
Surface Duo.
Yeah, that died a death.
It's annoying they didn't really push on with it because it was kind of cool. But you're right, and they're only going to give their staff an iPhone 15, so they can't play with the AI ChatGPT stuff. It's obviously coming as part of Apple Intelligence. It seems an odd one here. Like, what's happening in China with Android?
Do they not
it makes me not want to go to that country with an Android device?
Do they not just trust Android phones in China specifically?
Or have state got involved in it?
Well, it is interesting. We know that Apple run different infrastructure in China. Your iCloud services are different in China to what they are in the rest of the world. And this is an example of, for all Gruber gets his knickers in a knot talking about how the EU are interfering, Apple bow down very low in China for their services and what the state gets to see compared to what they can see in the rest of the world. Because that's just the cost of doing business in the country. They don't sell...
You're right, it is a cost, isn't it?
They don't sell a lot of iPhones in China, apart from to Microsoft's employees. And I believe they're very aspirational for Chinese citizens that they are more expensive than an Android or a Chinese-made phone. But at the same time, they're there primarily to have them made, not sold, although even it is such a large market.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm thinking about Apple's Intelligence going live in China at some point in the future. Is that going to be stored in plain text so state media can have a look at it, like we were just talking about ChatGPT? It's an interesting one. This, I think it's interesting, but equally, if it's not good enough to use in China, why, as a IT leader for a big corporate, would I want my guys and girls using Android phones for their authenticator app? If it's not good enough for Microsoft on Android, I don't know.
Well, there's been scandals with the iPhone involving authenticator apps, hasn't there? There was one that looked very like Microsoft Authenticator that was at the top of the store. So if it's bad on iOS, it's probably worse on Android. And again, here be dragons. You need to be very careful with your two-factor authenticator apps. I know how difficult it is to move the Microsoft Authenticator apps between iPhones. You go back to, you'll know this as a large corporate. Moving that Authenticator app from one trusted device to another is a pain in the bum.
Yeah, for some reason it's ridiculously painful. It must be a tricky message though from Microsoft here. In one hand, you're going, use our Authenticator app to protect yourselves. It's amazing, but in that country, we're going to recommend our own team use it only on this piece of hardware. It's an odd story, that one.
It is. I'd like to hear a little bit more about it at some point. It feels almost like a bit of a withdrawal from China by Microsoft in some ways.
That's why I wasn't sure if the two stories were linked. Are they retracting from China? I don't know.
That would be a hell of a thing to do.
It's a statement, isn't it?
I don't know what statement it is.
You can understand it, but it would be quite a statement and could have a backlash.
It could well do. Speaking of things with a backlash, a major development focus within iOS and SwiftUI, and not just iOS, but all Apple platforms, has been the deployment of what are called CocoaPods. So this is effectively like being able to download libraries as a developer to make some things easier. So back in the day, for example, you might have JSON, which is a particular way of storing data. early versions of Swift were really bad at parsing JSON. You would download a CocoaPods library from a third-party developer, embed it in your Xcode project, and then that would be deployed to devices. In the advent of Swift UI, obviously CocoaPods are still a thing, but apparently they've now come with a security vulnerability as well.
Yeah, this isn't good. I hadn't heard of CocoaPods for a long time, but the article's saying how they're linked to Meta apps, Apple apps, Microsoft apps, TikTok apps, Amazon apps. So a lot of the big tech companies in there. This isn't good, is it?
No, it's really not good. Apparently, it's will allow for the particular vulnerability, CVE 2024-38366, allows for remote code execution on the trunk server thanks to email exchange verification using a particularly vulnerable Ruby package. Ruby's a programming language as well. So there's a whole bunch of, I think there's 3 potential security violations within the CocoaPods that have been deployed to all devices if you've got those apps installed. So I guess it's just another thing to be careful of, isn't it, when you're using third-party libraries? That we saw this before with the I can't remember the actual name of it, but it was a JavaScript bug, wasn't it? That was affected lots of open source servers worldwide, and this is another one.
It is, and we rave about open source generally, but it's disappointing.
Well, I don't think you can. Of course, vulnerabilities can be injected into open source, but you've got a better chance of finding them than you have in closed source code. It's a chicken and egg thing for me.
That's true, and there's probably more people looking at it as well.
Like with that SSH, where vulnerability we talked before, when it was probably a state actor who had ingratiated himself with the development team and had gradually introduced that change to the code. It had taken years to do, but because the code was open, another developer could fire in there and find it. So if Microsoft have things like this that are being, are vulnerable to other states getting access to that or knowing about these vulnerabilities that they're not patching for whatever reason, then that's even more of an issue. Yeah,
definitely. But this is a growing trend, isn't it? I think that's my concern here. There's a lot more of this coming out. And it's hard if you're a company, you're trying to protect your internal IT, you're trying to protect your users, your websites, maybe you do some custom app development. There's so many different attack vectors for a company to worry about. It's problematic to say the least.
It definitely is. On a related note, Twilio, which is a company that makes a two-factor authenticator app, has also leaked some data, and they have had a hack that's exposed phone numbers of 33 million users. So I've used Twilio. I used it as my authenticator app for a long time before I went back to 1Password. This is a bit scary, really, when these authenticator apps are becoming A, targets, and B, increasingly vulnerable.
Yeah, this isn't good, and I know some companies that use this, so it's a bit of a concern, isn't it? Because Twilio is a big name in that space.
So it very much is.
It's a bit worrying, and that's a big leak. That's a lot of mobile numbers, and a lot of people won't even know that they're registered with Twilio because they're registered with them through a third party. And obviously, what could be interesting there for a hacker is they may get hold of the number, but also that person may have their number in there multiple times. So you've got they use different services or our customers somewhere. So yeah, not good.
Yeah, but your two-factor authenticator then goes on to your banking app, potentially, however many websites you log into, your Google, your Microsoft, all manner of things. And like I say, I've switched to 1Password and I deleted my Twilio account, but I used it quite extensively for a while. And one of the things I really liked about it in the early days of these things was that it was mirrored across devices. You had a Mac version, you had a phone version, you had an iPad version, and those authentications were mirrored across them all, and that was really handy sometimes.
Yeah, that's what you want. That's why I use 1Password a lot, because I want my 2FA codes on all my devices. It works really well. I've got it all there. So I can see why that is a bonus, but equally it's a risk at the same time.
It is. A happier story for once. Nothing, which is a mobile phone company, which we've talked to in relation to the iMessage news story that we had a few months ago. The very clever developer that managed to get iMessage to work on Android phones, Beeper. Beeper. So we talked about Nothing in the context of Beeper, that they were featuring Beeper on their phones, their Nothing brand phones when they released. They obviously pulled that for all the issues that came along with Beeper. But they make good Android phones at a reasonable price. So they're quite high-end phones, the Nothing brand phones, for about $500, $600, sort of comparable to Samsung's higher-end devices and things like that. They have just released a budget brand. It's called the CMF Phone 1, and it's a bit of fun, and it's quite cheap and quite good value from what I can see.
This looks amazing. I have a 12-year-old son who would love a phone like this that he could take to bits, and just to play with it, he would love it. It looks great. I don't think it's available though here in the UK, is it? It's going to be in America, I think, to begin with.
I think we'll get it. So, Mr. Who's the Boss, which is a YouTube channel I follow, has done a review of this about 5 hours ago. It's kind of taking it to bits. It's still not a user replaceable battery. We're not talking about a Fairphone or something like that. But you can take the back off it. You can put different backs on it. It's got user exposed screws. The SIM card ejection tool also contains a screwdriver. You can put on a magnetic plate instead, so you can have your wallet on there, or you can build in a stand. You can make it have chrome screws and a blue back or an orange back or something like that. And the review of the phone was really good. Yes, it's a $200 phone. A $200 phone with good enough cameras, 5,000 milliamp hour battery, an OLED screen that goes up to 2,000 nits peak brightness, and we'll have 3 years worth of security updates. I think that's pretty good.
I think that's pretty good too. And like I say, my son would love it because one week he might have blue screws, next week he might have the wallet piece on it. I know he'd take it to bits and want to buy different colours to put on it and tweak it. So I think it's kind of cool. I'd like to see one of these in person.
I would too, and their software looks like a very light tweak on default Android, so you're getting a really good stock experience with some thoughtful things. In the review, Mr. Who's the Boss, who is a British tech journalist, we've talked about him before in relation to the Samsung batteries, is playing one of the newer games available for Android, and he said it started to overheat and throttle after a little period of time. If you dropped all the settings down, it's playing the most demanding Android games now, and it's a $200 device. I think that's incredible.
That is incredible, given that a lot of devices are £1,000, if not more.
And with it comes a headphone range and a smartwatch and all the rest of it, also for knockdown prices. I think this is a really clever move on behalf of a new device manufacturer. They're setting up their own ecosystem of good value, decent amount of security updates, and who's to say they couldn't support that for longer? So well done, nothing.
Yeah, and I think designs look good, colours look good. For the money, seems a very good package.
I'd go with that. What doesn't seem such a good package is Google's energy emissions. So we talked about in the context of how ChatGPT and Google's Gemini and all this not on device, shifting AI stuff to the server might have an energy impact. Well, apparently their emissions have gone up. Google's have gone up 48% since 2019. I bet in the last year they've gone up even more.
Wow. That is a big increase, isn't it? And there's been a lot of talk, speculation around energy consumption and AI. And I think a lot of tech companies have kind of batted it away. No, it's nothing to worry about. But surely these numbers speak for themselves.
Yeah, totally. And if you read through the article, Google aren't the only cloud provider grappling with a growing carbon footprint. In May, Microsoft revealed its carbon dioxide emissions had increased nearly 29.1% since 2020. So that's a shorter period of time.
That's ridiculous, isn't it? I mean, perhaps they're playing catch up.
But for what benefit? I mean, Google's saying they're committed to a net zero target for 2030. I don't see how that's going to be possible if they're going to continue to embed this kind of stuff unless we get vastly more efficient quickly.
Yeah, that does feel, shall we say, challenging to achieve that in such a short period of time.
Yeah, I wonder what Apple's figures will be and if they'll release them.
Surely they're going to bury them in something, because they're very good at burying individual things next to something else.
Yeah, we talked about some of their more unfortunate emissions last week. There you go. At least Google are being honest that they're killing the planet really fast.
Yeah, you've got to admire their transparency.
For this.
For this, that's fair.
A company that's being a lot less transparent. Do you like my links this week?
You're on it.
Boeing have accepted a guilty plea deal for the 737 MAX crashes. So, quick summary. 2 Boeing 737 MAXs crashed 3 years ago, I think, at this point. A Lion Air one and a Malaysian Airlines one, something like that. Killing over 200 passengers, or over 300 passengers, actually. Brand new planes, not off the runway. It was all traced back to what's called an MCAS sensor, so it's a sort of an angle of attack. If the plane decided it was in a nose-down attitude, because the engines were overpowered, a nose-up attitude, it would force the nose of the plane down. There was only one of these things. It was easily broken, and none of the pilots had been retrained to realize that this was a problem, because Boeing didn't want to recertify the 737 MAX as being a different aircraft. So, issues. 2 planes crashed, lots of people died. 2 documentaries, one on Netflix, one on Amazon about it. One's called Downfall. It's really worth a watch. All sorts of weird things have been happening with Boeing. It appears there's been a culture of maximizing profits, moving away from the safety-based engineering company that become. Anybody who speaks up appears to die, which is a bit, odd and tinfoil hat of me, but it was definitely a thing. The two whistleblowers both died in short order. This judgment here, or this guilty plea deal, means they won't have to accept any corporate liability for manslaughter charges, effectively, for all the people that they've killed as part of this investigation. The families understandably aren't happy, but I think on the part of the US government, this means that a leading manufacturer, one of the two leading manufacturers of aircraft in the world, can get on with making aircraft, and it just feels a bit slimy.
It does, but the government aren't going to let that company fail, are they? I think we've talked about that. But they're really going through it, though, in every possible way. They're not in a good place, are they? And companies are like this, they're starting to unwind, but hopefully, he says, they're going to actually have some morals and sort themselves out. But wasn't one of the planes, though, that you just mentioned, didn't one of them disappear?
No. That was a Malaysian airline, MH378. That vanished over the Pacific somewhere, didn't it? On a flight to Australia I think it was to Australia. No, this was two that took off, did weird sort of dive, climb, and crashed. One was Ethiopian Airlines, and one was a Malaysian airline. I don't know if it was Malaysian Airlines. I'll probably say in the article if I can find it in my panic.
No,
you're
right. You're right. I was misremembering. I just remember one disappearing, and like, how do you lose a plane?
But there's been problems with Boeing for a while. The 787, which is the Dreamliner, has got all sorts of issues with its avionics, and there's apparently something where they need to have them entirely reset every 7 or 8 flights because they start drifting. They can't land on runways of like 3 degrees or something like that because the compasses can't cope. The 737 MAX has had this MCAS failure, and then it had the door blowout of the Alaska Airline ones. The cargo plugs weren't installed properly, and that blew it. It's had bulkhead issues. It's a problematic aircraft, all because they wanted to rush it out and maximize profits for short haul. Well, over-engine the 737 so it could do longer hauls, shorter distance takeoffs, keep airlines buying them, all that kind of stuff. And the safety culture of Boeing, if you watch any of the documentaries about it, has just gone. They're only about maximizing profits. And that's wrong for a company with an incredible engineering pedigree that Boeing had. As a kid, I've flown since I was very young, always felt better when I got on a Boeing aircraft for whatever reason, and I certainly haven't felt that. I've flown a lot the last few weeks, and 2 of them were Boeing, and I felt quite unsafe on both of them.
Yeah, it's not good, is it? This is the problem, though, when people chase the shareholders. Sometimes your morals get left at the door, and it's wrong, and it will only ultimately come back and bite you.
I can't remember if I linked in a previous podcast to John Oliver's investigation, the Late Show's investigation at the Boeing. It's only about 25 minutes. It's really, really worth the watch about how the culture of Boeing, from the merger with McDonnell Douglas in the 80s, how you can chart exactly that point, the company going into decline.
So I was just looking for the link as we're talking. Yeah, it's not good, is it? And I think they've recently had a new CEO and stuff, haven't they? So maybe they're going to try and turn it around.
If you fill for a minute, I will find the link and I'll put it in the show notes.
I've got the Boeing link for John Oliver, so I'll stick that in.
Perfect. It's absolutely worth a watch. It's from 4 months ago. It's at 8.6 million views on YouTube, and it's an excellent investigation done in a typical John Oliver humorous way, but it tells everything that you need to know about this sort of the sad decline of Boeing, really. And I don't think this will help in some ways. This is a slap on the wrist for a company as rich as Boeing. And you can see, they've bought back things like Spirit Aviation and some of the companies that they'd spun off to do their airframes and things like that. So they're obviously trying to re-centralize things and sort things out. It feels like they've got a long way to go.
It does, and it takes a long time to get your loyal customers back and repair a reputation.
Yeah, but I'd recommend anybody watch that. Should we talk about something cool?
I was just going to do real-time follow-up. I think I was incorrect, and the Boeing CEO is stepping down in March. So there you go. He did step down in March. Oh, no, sorry. They announced in early March he's going to step down at the end of 24. And I'm guessing because of all of this shenanigans that's been going on his watch.
I have little comment about that. Do you want to talk about something cool?
Something cool. So this is the summer's coolest new smart kitchen gadget. And it's an ice maker. Now, you've put this in here. I was quite surprised of why are we going to be talking about an ice maker?
I can't believe, A, that people will spend $600 on an ice maker when many people's fridges contain ice makers.
I don't have an ice maker, I must confess. I have a relatively new fridge. I don't really want it. I didn't really want one in my fridge in case it goes wrong. I've got to clean it. So we didn't get an ice maker. You've been able to make ice though for years by just pouring cold water into a mold and sticking it in the freezer. So that's kind of where I'm at with it. My wife though prefers to get a bag of ice cubes from the shop around the corner because she thinks it tastes better.
So the hook for this thing is apparently it makes nugget ice, which is layered ice. So not just ice frozen in a big block of water, and not like little ice chips like you might get if you ground the ice up as it came out of the bag or your freezer or whatever. But this actually layers the ice into the cube, which makes it more chewable, which some kids like and some people prefer in drinks, and it's better for cocktails and things. And it says in the article, might encourage children to hydrate. I think that's reaching. It sounds like somebody desperate to spend $600 on an ice maker to me.
I'd love to be a reviewer of this, I must say, so you can try it in cocktails, and I guess you judge it by how long it lasts and chills your drink down. I mean, it does look nice. It does look a cool gadget. It looks quite big. I don't know how noisy it's going to be, but yeah, $600 is a little excessive, I think.
And also, I suspect the American kitchen might be a little larger than the traditional British one. I'm pretty limited for a lot of tabletop space or worktop space in my kitchen, and by the time I have an air fryer, lives in the garage, there's a big mixer that gets pride of place, my coffee machine gets to go there, but if you had a NutriBullet, and I don't know, whatever else you put in your kitchen top, and there's many things you can put in a kitchen these days, by the time you put a sizable nugget ice maker on there as well, that's going to take up a lot of space in your kitchen.
Yeah, I'm with you here. I think countertops limited. This isn't for me. I would love one of these. And maybe I'll put it in my utility room and you go make a batch of ice. But it does look kind of cool.
Yeah, put it next to your bread maker, your pasta maker, and your ice cream maker, and you'll have I don't get it.
You complete the set. But I do think you're right, though. A lot of people, I'm probably in the minority, do have it on their fridge. So I think this is a small market they're trying to tap.
I got it on my fridge, and I love it. It's great.
I probably would. Do you have to clean it much? I have no idea how these things work.
No, you don't have to clean it much. It occasionally gets so much ice in it that you need to sort of pull the thing out and hack a bit of ice out of it because it gets frozen. But other than that, it's fine.
Maybe that's what I need to get next time the fridge goes.
The critical thing is you can get them where you fill up a container within the fridge freezer part of it and it will do this for you. But actually, if you can connect the mains water to the fridge, then you get ice cold water all the time and you get ice. So it's a win. Yeah,
I should maybe put plumbing in for that when I did my kitchen. I think I've made a mistake here.
You may well have made a mistake there. I like it anyway. And do you want to tell us a little bit then about Microsoft Notepad getting an upgrade?
Yeah, I just thought this was interesting. So it was just on the verge. I saw it this morning. So Microsoft's Notepad is going to get spell check and autocorrect 40 years after it's launched, which just kind of blew my mind. I guess it makes sense because we know they've retired WordPad, which was always a bit odd. You kind of had WordPad and Notepad, and they're similar, but obviously one was rich text, one plain. But yeah, they're putting spell check into Notepad. It's amazing. Microsoft, in fairness, do seem to be trying to maintain their legacy for a change rather than just keep it hanging around and not doing anything with it. So it does feel like Microsoft are slowly taking some of Apple's approach of killing off old things or modernizing them. So I'm giving them a small bit of kudos for it. I still get frustrated when you launch Control Panel because it's still there in Windows 11 and it looks like it's from Windows 95.
Yeah, I'm not going to give them much for Notepad. I don't think many people use Notepad. It's there as a bog standard based thing, and I never ever used it to write anything. I'd use it for a text file that I needed to look at, or look at a CSV to make sure the commas were in the right place, if there was nothing better installed on the computer. Yep. I don't need spell check in Notepad. Wouldn't most people fire up a Microsoft doc on the web or something like that? What do people use Notepad for? Put something better on. Put Notepad++ on. Put Visual Studio Code on. It's ridiculous. Just delete it, Microsoft.
No, I think they're right to have it. It's a good, simple app if you just want to quickly do something with plain text and you don't want any rich formatting on it. I think they should have done this ages ago. They've got the tech.
But now it's going to autocorrect it for you. What if you're writing code in it? I don't want that autocorrect.
I'm sure you can turn that on and off. But who's writing code in a Notepad that you can't syntax highlight?
I have written HTML in Notepad.
Yeah, I probably have too, to be fair.
Exactly. So if it starts autocorrecting that for you, you don't want that. You might not notice if you're frantically trying to bash out one change to a web page.
That's fair.
Anyway, I think it's a bit
I mean, I'm just impressed Microsoft are actually giving it some love. And like I say, they seem to be doing a better job of looking after their legacy, which they need to do. You've got to go on top of your tech debt.
I think they've run the Windows source code against ChatGPT and it's gone, this hasn't been updated. Quick, do something superficial, and it's written it for them.
Maybe ChatGPT just did it. Yeah, did it all for them. Job done.
Yep. Any more news?
No, I think that's it. Should we get on to media?
Let's do media. So I watched a film last night. Deadpool 3 is imminent. It's in 2 weeks, I think. So I'm super excited about that because I love the Deadpool films. So I'm up to date. I watched Deadpool 1 a couple of weeks back. I watched Deadpool 2 last night. Still a good film. Not as good as the original Deadpool film, but I really like it. I like the fact that the kid from Hunt for the Wilder People, which is a terrific film starring Sam Neill from from New Zealand, which, by the way, if you haven't seen, watch it with your children. It is absolutely terrific. It's Taika Waititi, it's Sam Neill, and this actor who's I can't remember. I apologise, but he's great in it. It's really funny. I've almost nothing bad to say about it at all. I love Deadpool 2. It's just not quite as good as Deadpool 1.
I think Deadpool 1 was good though because it was different. It was the whole concept was different. You know what I mean? You didn't really know what you were getting into, of how they filmed it and portrayed the story. Whereas Deadpool 2, I guess you know a little bit about, you know the setup, don't you? So it's less impactful, I guess. But no, I've enjoyed it. I should probably go and rewatch at some point because I will want to watch Deadpool 3 when it comes out. Where's Deadpool 3 coming out? Is it cinemas? Is it streaming? Is it both?
Cinemas. It's the big Marvel movie this year, I think.
Right, okay. I don't really. You may notice this, but I don't often keep up with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. I think I did the first 10 about 10 years after everybody else did the first 10, and then I abandoned my plans to watch it because it just got ridiculous.
The last couple of phases have been pointless, but I'm willing to give Deadpool the benefit of the doubt.
That's fair. I would agree with that.
Twisters.
So, I can't remember where I saw this. I saw this trailer for Twisters. I was like, that looks uncannily like a 1996 film called Twister, which I remember going to cinema to see in 96 with some friends. And you know what? They have basically remade Twister, and they've called it Twisters. You see what they've done there? They've slightly tweaked the story, but the concept looks very similar. So there you go. I've put a link to the trailer in it. I'm a little bit disappointed because maybe they could have done a Twister 2 or something and actually just go, here's the characters were then and here they are now. Obviously, sadly, Bill Paxton died. He was in the original one. But it did make me want to go back and rewatch the original, which I did. And quite a bit of it still stood up graphically, because obviously there was a lot of CGI. I hadn't realised, though, how problematic filming the first one was. Apparently there were strikes and stroppy directors and people walking off set and rewrites and just lots. So it's amazing it got made, but actually quite fond of that film, I think, just because I watched it when I was a kid and, yeah, quite enjoyed it.
I did I'll call it a ride, but it was more of an experience at Universal Studios of Twister. It was quite well done.
Okay, that's quite cool.
Never seen the film. I know Bill Paxton was in it. I think Helen Hunt was in it as well.
Yeah, so it's Bill Paxton, Helen Hunt, Philip Seymour Hoffman's in it. The guy off Speed that sat on the bus. He's also he's in Ferris Bueller's Day Off.
And Succession.
And Succession. So he's in it and looking incredibly young. So it's quite a cool cast. There's obviously many other people in it. But I didn't realise the director also filmed Speed. So
Makes
there
sense.
you go. But apparently he was a problematic director on Twister. But I don't know. I went and watched the original. I enjoyed it still. I'm annoyed because Twisters have just taken the same story and remade it. I wish they did something else with the concept to move it on.
I don't mind the title. I think Twisters is okay.
It's a good title.
My favourite sequel title, which hasn't come out yet, is Beetlejuice.
Yeah, that's quite good.
I think that's really clever. The first Beetlejuice film was great, and of course the trick in Beetlejuice, if you've seen it, is if you say Beetlejuice, that's how you get him to appear. So saying Beetlejuice, I think it's great.
Yeah, no, genius. Like somebody's thought about it. You can just see somebody having an epiphany. Go, so I give him that.
It's great, and you're going to tell us about the F1 film.
Oh yeah, so whilst I was at the Formula One yesterday, not only did we see some of the cars going around for the film, and they look different. They're sort of black and gold. And Brad Pitt was there apparently. I didn't get to see him. He didn't come and say hello, which was disappointing. So we saw a bit of filming, but they actually just before the race played the F1 trailer for the film that's coming out in 2025. It's got Brad Pitt in it, and it will be on Apple TV Plus. And I've put a link into the YouTube trailer. I don't know if you've watched it. As much as I love F1, and I generally do, I'm worried about the film because some of the shots just look very empty and there's just two cars going around the track, which when they filmed it, there was just two cars going around the track. So I'm curious to see, is it going to have a good story? I don't know. I'm curious to see. Is it going to be like Days of Thunder but for F1 or what's it going to be?
I don't want to be too flippant because I'm a motorbike fan and we have a lot more passes and overtaking than you get in Formula 1. So just saying two cars go around the track sounds like Formula 1 to me. But to give them their credit, it's probably unfinished, right?
I assume it's unfinished, but you've released a trailer, so So I'm curious to see where they're going to go with it. I will 100% going to watch it because it's well within my wheelhouse, and I've seen some. I've been at the track twice while they've been filming it because they filmed some footage last year. They filmed some this year. Must be a nightmare for consistency of weather and all of that. So I'm just curious to see how it's all going to come together.
Keanu Reeves was at the MotoGP race in Germany this week, and he waved the finishing flag. So there's a link back to Speed For You and Motorsport, which was cool. He's a huge bike fan, Keanu Reeves, and quite rightly so. Moving, but what's your favourite Formula 1 film then? This is the media section, so what's your favourite Formula 1 film? Without putting you on the spot, we could just go racing film, car film. But
I do like Ford versus Ferrari / Le Mans 66 because obviously they had two names for it. I think that's good. Just a side point though on Keanu, he actually did a documentary on Braun GP that did Formula 1 for 1 year. They were the underdog. They won it all with Jenson Button driving. Amazing story because literally they were the underdog. They weren't even going to be in, and they bought the company for £1 off of Honda, I think it was, and then it spawned out and became Mercedes that then won everything for about 8 years in a row. So yeah, I do like Le Mans 66. Is probably one of my favourite. Also, the Niki Lauda film was very good.
Hunt.
Yeah, sorry, the James Hunt film with Niki Lauda in it.
I think that the actor playing Niki Lauda was actually more memorable than Chris Hemsworth as James Hunt. And Chris Hemsworth was great, but I think Lauda's story was more compelling in many ways.
Yeah, agreed. How about you?
I was going to give both of those answers. I'd have put it in front of Le Mans / Ford versus Ferrari. I think it's a great film.
I loved it.
And of course, as a documentary, I think Senna is hard to beat. And I'm not a Formula 1 fan. I thought Senna was a tremendous documentary.
It's fun. No, Senna documentary-wise is fantastic. No, I loved it. But for me, Ford versus Ferrari, just cracking cast. It's just wall-to-wall, great actors, really well directed. I just loved it.
Yep. And then the final sort of link back to where we started, one of the better MotoGP films, documentaries of the last few years, has been a thing called Hitting the Apex, which is narrated by Brad Pitt. So there you go. That loops us right back around at the start.
Oh, fair play. Well done.
And if you ever want a compelling reason to watch anything, it's not a reason to watch anything, but unfortunately it features a fatality within Hitting the Apex, which is horrendous. But it's one of the few pieces of media that it happens on, and I watched that race live, and it almost I get the same feeling every single time I watch that scene. It's well done in the sense that it sort of captures the essence of why people race and the tragedies that can happen, and why they continue to race in the light of those tragedies, and how for the unfortunate individual involved and the people involved in it, how they're able to come back from something like that. And it's really quite a compelling piece of filmmaking.
Yeah, and I would 100% be the same. Like with the Senna documentary, there's a bit in that, and I remember it happening, and it's just quite chilling when you watch it back. So I agree with you there.
Yeah. And on that note, should we talk briefly some games?
Yeah, games. Not lots to report in games. So you've put in the show notes PlayStation monthly titles.
Yeah, so this was triggered by us having a chat pre-show about how disappointing the PlayStation lineup has been recently. And I kind of agree with you. I pay for the one above the monthly, get your 2 free games thing, and get access to the back catalogue. And I've featured the odd game in the past. I've done Ghost of Tsushima and one of the Spider-Man games, I think, and bits and pieces like that. I don't think they've announced anything very compelling, and B, it seems most of their focus is on bringing the lineup of games to the PC and the Steam store than actually bringing out new and interesting titles themselves.
Yeah, so for me, we've reported widely. I love a bit of Gran Turismo. I'm playing it a lot. I'm using my PlayStation, and I've bought a few other games on it, like The Last of Us and things. But I haven't bought many titles. I thought, I'm 2 years into my PlayStation. I'd have bought maybe more, maybe 3 years. I just haven't bought that many titles. I don't mind splurging 50, 60, 70, 80 pounds on a game if it's going to keep me entertained for a long period of time, and I'm really looking forward to it. It's what I did with Gran Turismo. I'm playing it 2.5 years later. I love it. but I'm disappointed with the titles. I'm just not seeing anything really compelling. I wouldn't mind another racing game. Wouldn't mind, a shooter. So, but I don't want to play multiplayer. I always want something, with a story on it. I can go through it and play at my own time. Some action games like a Tomb Raider or something along those lines. Whereas actually I'm getting that for me is more on my Switch, those sort of games I've been playing. I've spent way more money on games on my Switch, which if you'd have said that to me, I wouldn't have believed you. I even own 2 PlayStations and I'm still not buying any games on it. My kids want to play Rocket League and Fortnite and I'm not spending any money on those. So I just think it's frustrating that they have got some quality titles, 100%, but I'm seeing little. There's little that I'm keeping an eye on because I want to pick it up if it's on sale. Maybe I need to go and get Cyberpunk or something like that to try, because obviously they did the add-on recently. But I just haven't seen something that's PlayStation only that's really compelling. I'm worried because there's little that is, to me, that is PlayStation only that I really want. And what does that mean for the next round of PlayStations?
Yeah, it's challenging. I think if it came around with PlayStation 6 and they had Gran Turismo 9 or whatever they'll have by then, you'll buy one to play Gran Turismo 9. I mean, I'd buy one to play Call of Duty, presumably, if my thumbs last that long without getting horrendous arthritis or something. I'm kind of with you. There are those exclusive titles, but they're bringing them to PC now, so that sort of devalues it a little bit. Having said that, I don't have Windows anymore, so that's out for me. I'll play on the console for those titles that are there. So I'm going to be there, and I'm not really going to play on the Xbox because you get a better experience than the PlayStation, although I did destroy one of the controllers recently. And not because in Rage it just stopped working. It started drifting to the left all the time.
I don't think the controllers are that good.
There's a lot of electronics in there.
Build quality.
They're not very robust, are they?
No.
I'm going to give an illustration of what you're talking about, though. There's a game which has been incredibly well reviewed. It's called Animal Well, link in the show notes, which is featured in amongst my monthly games that I can download. Everybody loved Animal Well, and I could not connect with it. I mean, it's very pretty. I appreciate it's clearly a labeler of love for the developer, and it's probably a mile deep, but I haven't got the time, and I haven't got the reactions to be able to play this kind of thing anymore. And when you said Cyberpunk, that's a huge, deep game that you got to invest hours and hours and hours and hours in. And part of this may be a function of our age. We haven't got hours and hours and hours to get used to the controls or learn something new and all the rest. So what we want is to dive in, play something quick for half an hour, 45 minutes tops, and then move on and do something else, because that's all the time we've got. So we want something quite accessible to get on and do. And I think Gran Turismo satisfies that for you in the same way Call of Duty does for me. So it's a shame, but maybe we're just old.
There is that. I think for me, Gran Turismo, I can pick it up if I just want a little go. I can have a go at doing the licenses. Like 30 seconds, you get to have a go. You can do it 20 times or something. Try and score gold. And I'm slowly just chipping away at the different areas of it, trying to complete it. But it scratches the itch. It gives me a bit of escape to do. I love red cars. I love racing. I'm slowly filling it. And to be fair to them, they've kept updating the game quite frequently. I've only ever paid £70 for that game, which at the time I was like, well, that's a lot of money. But here I am 2 years later. They don't release something every month, but say 6 out of 12 months they do an update. That's pretty good that you're getting 6 updates a year. You're getting some extra cars, some tracks. Every week they've got weekly races they want you to do. They're races that are available in the game. You may have already done them, but you can win extra money virtual money for doing them. And it keeps there's enough in there just to keep me engaged, but I don't need to sink another 10 hours into it. I can just slowly chip away at it. But I just fancy some other games, and like I say, I've spent a bit of money on my PlayStation, got a nice big telly. I just haven't found the thing that's an insta purchase. Even if I pay full price for it, I'll be happy. I'm just disappointed, I think, with the lack of compelling titles. I thought there'd be more at this point.
So A world, B, I think the AAA world is a bit disappointing these days. As we talked about, we've seen developer layoffs, we've seen marketing deals change, FIFA being an example of that. Maybe it's a changing world, and things like Games Pass and all the rest of it are sucking the oxygen out of the room when it comes to these things, and that's why we're not seeing the big titles. I'm sure if you downloaded Edge magazine free with your Apple TV Plus subscription, Apple Plus subscription, you'd be able to see all the amazing things that were coming. But it takes an investment, I think, to learn a new game. It's easy to fall back in an old one, and you do see a lot of tropes revisited. The Call of Duty I like so much. It's really been the same game for the last 4 years, 5 years, 10 years possibly. It's the same mechanic fundamentally. Gran Turismo, for all of its tweaks and improvements and graphical and all the rest of it, is effectively Gran Turismo that you bought in the PlayStation 1 way back in the day. It's familiar. You fall back into those habits. And that's
it's that concept, isn't it? Gran Turismo
yeah.
1. Same point with Grand Theft Auto a little bit. I do think Grand Theft Auto, they made it too big in a way. I don't know. My favourite is still Vice City because it was the smallest one. I really understood it and just loved it. And I even went back and played it, I think on the Switch. I replayed the whole thing all the way through.
Yeah. Also available with your PlayStation Monthly account, Liberty City Stories and all that kind of stuff.
The only thing I wanted to look at with the PlayStation Monthly one, because at the moment I have to play Gran Turismo on one of the PlayStations, is only, I own it, but if my son's playing one game over here or on that PlayStation, can I go over there and play the game? But it has to sign you out of one PlayStation into the other. That's what Gran Turismo does. And I wanted to look a bit more into that, if the monthly thing would let me play more games at the same time, just between my family and I.
I really don't know. I mean, I think...
No, I don't either. I need to look into it.
They want you to have multiple subscriptions, probably. Anyway, it's an interesting thought, and one we should probably revisit at some point, is the approach to gaming and what we do with it. But we've definitely been struggling for games, and that's illustrative all of itself.
That is true. Do you want a quick Beta 3 update?
Go on.
They've seemed to have made icons darker. So if you've got the dark icon set turned on, if you look at my Audible icon and my Teams icon, they're slightly darker. But then if you look at my Glass account, it looks like it's picked a different icon. So I don't know if developers have released have nominated dark icons in some of their app updates and stuff.
I don't know how you change the icon packs.
You have you not done this?
No.
Okay, so not great if you're listening to us, but you can follow along. So you push and hold to get it into wiggle mode. You tap edit and you tap customize. You can then pick small icons where you have the words underneath of what the app is. I don't know why you can't do this with small, but you then go to large. You can get rid of the words underneath, which I love, and you can pick automatic, dark, light, or tinted. Tinted looks rubbish. I'm loving the dark icons. Would recommend.
Well, there you go. All right. Well, I've got dark icons on now. I didn't know how to do that.
I think they're looking good. I'm loving the dark icons.
Great radio. Should we do a main show?
Oh, and they've sorted out the maps icon. It looks less pants.
Main show.
Let's do the main show.
So a very small amount of feedback. Just before I went away on holiday, I got an Apple Studio display for work. It works. It's fine. I plug in a cable. It comes on. I unplug the cable. It goes off. You don't have very much control over it, do you?
What do you need to control?
I don't know. Maybe I'd want to... I actually don't know. Like a power button, for example, would be quite good.
The biggest thing I would like, if I'm being honest, is the ability to have multiple inputs.
Yeah, I think it needs that.
In my shed, I've got my iPad that I use for work. I plug it in. I then come over to a completely different monitor just to use my Mac Mini. I would love to have different inputs for it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. On the top level, it's great. The webcam is good enough. The speakers are fine. The microphone's okay. The display is great though. It's a 5K, lovely looking display with decent brightness. Which is exactly what I wanted. So I've effectively got my old 5K iMac display back, but my laptop can be closed, next to it plugged in, shut, off to one side. I've got an Apple wireless keyboard and mouse, and it just works fine. And from that point of view, it's exactly what I wanted. Enough screen real estate so I can get on and do my job, gets out of my way. I can pick my laptop up at the end of the day. And I have, in the words of Marco Arment, got a desktop laptop. I can take it home. I've got that set up. I can take it to work. I've got that set up. It's great. It charges one cable. I absolutely understand it. It's too expensive for what it is. It's absolutely too expensive for what it is. It should be, I think it should be about 800 quid, frankly, for what that is. That feels about the right kind of price for a screen of that display that doesn't do much else other than give you a couple of extra Thunderbolt displays, ports. It's not, as you say, it doesn't support multiple screens. The webcam is not fantastic. It's certainly not a 4K webcam like you and I now both have parked on top of these screens. It's good, but you pay an Apple tax, I understand. It's a very good display. Work paid for it, because it's my work lap. I would not buy one for my own desktop, though.
I think that's fair. I'd say this. I think the speakers are pretty good. I do like the speakers. I think they're pretty, I watched film on it earlier, I thought, wow, that sounds all right. I think your review's fair. I was happy to part with the money because I've never owned a brand new Apple display. Really wanted one. I'd bought rubbish ones off eBay in the past. I do like it. I think the quality's good. I love the screen. The screen is amazing. It is overpriced. I'd love them to bring out the next version. I hope they will. At some point there'll be a newer one, maybe with a better camera and what have you. And I'd love them to keep this one around in the lineup, but make it more accessible to people. drop the price. If somebody does want a Mac Mini with an Apple display, the Apple display isn't like twice the cost of the Mac Mini.
It's low resolution. It's low refresh rate as well. It's like 60 hertz or something, isn't it? You know, I've got an OLED, well, whatever I've got, a mini LCD on my MacBook Pro that's 120 hertz ProRes screen. Surely it should have that.
I think that's what they need to do on the next one, I would say. For me, on my iPad, I don't overly notice it. But like I said, I'd like them to keep it round as a lower. I would love them to do a low-end screen for people that would like an Apple display. Sub 700 quid is what they should be charging for it. Half the price for it. Bring out a newer model that takes that price point with a better webcam. Maybe it's slightly bigger, maybe not. I don't know. I'm quite happy with 27 inch. Does seem a good size for me. Like, it's big enough. I think it's nice. I would love them to do multiple inputs. But I just can't see them doing it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And make the stand adjustable without having to pay extra.
I do agree there. Part of me wishes I bought the adjustable stand, but I was upset at the time about the cost. But in hindsight, I probably should have done. Or just get the VESA one, and then you can just bolt a different arm onto it. But that is frustrating.
And to be completely fair to you, you bought it when it came along, and at that point, maybe it made sense for 1,500 quid. But a couple of years down the line now, and there's slightly better stuff available, and it should have dropped in price because it's great, but it's not worth it really. So that's my review of it. I think it's a good enough screen, but it should be better really for the price.
Agreed. I do think Apple will do a bad job of, right, this product's hanging around for 3 years. Halfway through, we're going to reduce the price because it's old tech. They are not good at that.
It's the Tim Cook experience written large. Can I tell you about an interaction I had with Apple Tech Support?
Yeah, I was worried when you were at Apple Studio displaying the dock and then Apple Tech Support straight afterwards.
No, so this is related to my wife's iPhone 15. Her Apple Pay stopped working entirely. So I did the usual troubleshooting things. I reset all network settings because it's an NFC chip, and I removed and added a card again, and everything seemed to go fan. And she cannot trigger Apple Pay either by double tapping the wallet button or by bringing it close to an NFC reader. Neither of the cards on there that we've removed and added in again work. So I thought, okay, Apple Store time. You know, we're going to Cardiff the other day. I thought Apple Store time. So I tried to book a Genius appointment, and I couldn't. And I don't know the last time you tried to book a Genius appointment.
I've never done it, I think.
Never done it. I've done it a lot. I've done it for broken laptops and phones and all manner of things. Swollen batteries, this and that. And it used to be you just visit a web page on Apple's website. It would bring up a thing. You'd click on a time and a date. You'd go along. They'd look at your device, and that would be that. No way to do that.
Really? Actually, I'm lying. No, I have done it. I did it when my iPad had water in it, and they swapped out my iPad for me.
Yep. So I couldn't find a way to do that. Instead, I had to put in a serial number. I had to log in. I had to go and follow a whole thing. And then I got connected to an Apple Technical bot, I think. It might have been a real person. I'm not sure. There was a chat bot that launched in a web page on the iPhone. So it didn't actually interact with the chat messages app on your iPhone. I got a web page on the iPhone to log into. So chatting back and forth via the text chat, they got me to send a technical submission via the iPhone. Did you know you could do this?
Oh, I did not know you could do this.
You go into settings, and then a new option appears when you're on the phone to Apple Technical Support to submit a hardware test of your iPhone. Mm-hmm. So did that, couldn't find any problems. I said, well, you know, as far as I'm concerned, it's not fixed. There's nothing wrong with the NFC chip, sir. I said, well, So they escalated me to a higher line tech support person who rang back, I think from America, based on the accent, might have been local. Came through as a Glasgow number, but didn't sound like somebody from Glasgow, who asked if they could take screen control of the phone, and did, and then watched me sort of move around the phone. They couldn't manipulate the phone, but they could put an arrow on the phone to say, click this, click that, move here, go back, do this. So that in itself was quite interesting. We went through of bits and pieces. They made us remove the VPN settings from the phone for some reason. What that effect that on the NFC chip, I don't know. Reset a couple of other things, removed this, deleted the cards and re-added them again, and said that should be it fixed. Went out to buy a thing, and it still doesn't work. So this is a brand new iPhone 15, where suddenly, for no reason, the Apple seemed to be able to explain that Apple Pay doesn't work. And she finished the call with me by saying, and if this doesn't work, just nuke the phone.
Really? Just what, factory reset and go again?
Total factory reset and go again. Now, that's not something that you really want to do.
I'd be uncomfortable doing that with my wife's phone because you know there'll be something that's on it that's not synced.
Well, it's exactly what we've just been talking about. It's Microsoft Authenticator. that having to put that on for an NHS access for her devices again was a 3-month odyssey into the depth of NHS technical support, and I don't want to go through that again.
No, like I say, I think I would be uncomfortable doing that. I don't mind when my wife gets a new phone, I set it all up for her, but I won't nuke the old phone until I've got confirmation life's okay. I would be absolutely stumped though if my Apple Pay didn't work on my phone, because I don't often take my wallet with me. I'd be absolutely in a tricky situation for me.
Well, I was encouraging her more and more to make use of Apple Pay, and she has an Apple Watch as well. And for whatever reason, you can't add cards to that Apple Watch, and it makes me wonder if there's something odd about her iCloud account where these things are going wrong. But it's really weird.
That is really weird, and obviously it's not helping you, and you're trying to encourage your partner to use tech to do tasks that she can just do with her bank card.
Yeah, so I think that's the end of Apple Pay on those devices.
Wow, okay. But surely they should swap your phone out, because what happens if you pass the phone on to one of your daughters in the future?
Well, they said it's not a hardware problem, so Apple's not going to take any liability for that. It's a software problem, and they can fix that, maybe, by getting you to nuke it.
Interesting.
I know, you're for those that watch the video, Chris's face is worth looking at that point.
Put iOS 18 on it and see if that fixes it.
That's not the answer, you know that.
No, I know it's not the answer, by the way.
So
I just don't know what I would do though. That's the qualm I'm having in my head. I'm like, what would I do?
This is it. This is the resolution. What do you do? Because I think for now, nothing. Just have to live and carry a cash card.
Part of me would probably get an old iPhone, set up, restore onto it, make sure all the Authy stuff worked on that, and then nuke the new phone, and then go again.
But you can only have it on one device. By the time you go through all the Authy stuff to move it to the old phone.
Yeah.
What's the point of that?
Yeah, okay. Oh, okay. I was assuming you might be able to have it on two things. But
yeah, can only be on one thing.
Then I'm all out.
NHS, man, they'll only let you have it on one thing.
Okay.
So that's a bit of a non-starter, but I thought it was an interesting experience with Apple Technical Support, and to be fair to she was incredibly helpful, talking it through. I'm going to stop screen sharing now because you're going to add your card back in. I don't want to see the numbers. I don't want to see any potential passwords. So they thought about all that stuff. So fair play. And they got back to us very quickly, and the bot was very helpful if it was a bot and not a person. But who can tell these days? But just a couple of weird things in there. One about, it's funny, it's yours and mine responses to a user where something wasn't working from 25 years ago. Nuke it and start again. That's basically where we still are with these things. I would have hoped we'd have moved past that.
Yeah, and it is easier in this day and age to nuke something and to retain most of your data, but I don't know. What happens if you just walked in store?
I think you still need to book a Genius in advance. You can't just see a Genius, can you?
I don't know.
And part of me wonders if, I know they've been cutting back on that part of the store. They just want to sell you stuff. They don't want to fix things so much anymore. And, you can understand that. It's expensive to keep more technical people around in shops. They must still have them because they still do repairs and things like that. But unless I'm missing something, there didn't seem to be a way to shortcut it to just walk into an Apple store, because that would have been perfect.
Yeah, can I just take it in and somebody actually eyeball it and tell me what the problem is?
Yeah. Make it work. Or you can't make it work. You're going to have to nuke it. We'll do it here in the shop. We'll guarantee everything will work for you again, which of course they can't do. But, interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, being a genius in an Apple store must be quite a stressful job. I would never want to do it, because you've literally got somebody's personal data that's not backed up, pretty much.
We've all seen things on computers you don't want to see either, so it's not a job I'd want.
No.
Third story for the main show, and this probably won't take very long. I had a hire car last week. I had a Mazda CX-5 little SUV thing to drive to a conference. I didn't want to take my car. It was quite cheap to do it, in the sense that the university has a deal with a provider, and it let me take two of my colleagues with me on a road trip up to Liverpool for the conference, cheaper than getting a train. We drove up through Wales. The car, I may as well talk about the car, was deeply average. It's one of the slowest things I've ever driven in my life. I know I'm used to an electric car now and that acceleration. I also drive a van. This thing's 0 to 60 was maybe a week, maybe 10 days, something like that, I'd say, and that's being generous to it. It was reasonably well screwed together inside, no squeaks or creaks. The seats were relatively comfortable. There was plenty of space in it, so it was fine. Some of the plastics were a bit cheap, but it had CarPlay. And if you remember, you and I talked about Mazda on this podcast, about their last manufacturer to bring anything involving CarPlay, ignoring Tesla, Rivian, SL, to one of their cars. So I thought, great, it's got a nice big screen on it. I'll have CarPlay. It even has wireless CarPlay. What was wrong with the screen?
I think
Chris?
everything's wireless CarPlay.
No. Not everything.
Now onwards, I mean, I think.
No.
Okay.
Yeah. Hyundai Ioniq 5 or a Kia EV6 from 2 years ago weren't wireless CarPlay.
Oh, okay. So you asked me what was wrong with the screen.
What was wrong with the screen, Chris? So it was like a wide screen plonked on top of the dashboard.
Is it really low quality?
No, it was fine.
Touchscreen.
It wasn't a touchscreen.
What?
Wasn't a touchscreen, Chris.
Now I would be all right with that, because in my Beamer, you can touch the screen, but it's got the iDrive control dial, and when I'm driving, I actually prefer using the dial, because I think actually touching the screen is more distracting when I'm trying to drive. Whereas if I know I'm going to go put an album on, I will just scroll on the wheel while I'm driving along. I don't know why. I'm not looking at the screen as much as when I'm trying to touch it while I'm moving.
So I drive a Tesla. I can only touch the screen.
Yeah, because you change gear, you've got to touch the screen. Or
no, it's not. It's an electric car. I don't need to change gear. On my version of Tesla, it's on a stick.
Put it in reverse, then.
Yeah. Newer versions, that's true. No, this had a scrolly, clicky wheel thing, and it was poxy, and I hated every single second of it. But to get in and out of the various screens, to go and find something else, I wouldn't find an album while I was driving. I'd tell Siri to do it, or I'd give up.
You've not driven a BMW recently?
I have driven a BMW. How very dare you? It had a touchscreen.
So in my BMW, if I push the Siri button, CarPlay pops up the Siri orb and then instantly crashes every time.
But don't you just shout out, "Hey Dingus"?
It doesn't matter how you invoke it. However you invoke Siri, it just bombs out the whole of CarPlay every time. I think it was a BMW update that's killed it, and not an iOS update, because I've had it for 3 or 4 months now when it last updated the OS of the car. So I can't actually use Siri when I'm driving along. It's so frustrating.
That's terrible.
I agree, it's awful. It's really annoying. And every time there was a little update that BMW released, I thought, brilliant, they've just fixed that one bug, and it did nothing. So it's so frustrating, because I used to use it a lot, like play this song, the family want to listen to a song, and I use CarPlay every time I get in that car because it's wireless. I listen to Audible books, I listen to podcasts, I listen to a lot of Apple Music, and I can't use Siri at all. It makes me so infuriated.
That's upsetting. Anyway, that was my sort of report back that to me CarPlay was almost useless in the sense that because there was no touchscreen in the car.
It should all be touchscreen. It is.
It's table stakes at this point, isn't it? It was a lovely, clear, high-resolution screen. Why are you restricting me to this stupid bloody knob thing that I need to look down at? Because it had a single rotary knob on the left-hand side, and then the tiniest volume switch you've ever seen off to the left-hand side of it, and about 4 buttons around it. So I'm having to take my eyes off the road to look down to see where I'm vaguely poking down in the center console.
So was the knob vertically mounted?
It was like down where your gear stick or
your okay. So that's where mine is. All right, okay. Yeah. I don't mind it, but I can imagine for most people, if they've not driven like a BMW that's got that. I don't know if Mercedes have it, but it would be frustrating. But it should be touchscreen first, surely.
Poxy, Mazda. You've just, not that you'd have had a sale, but you've definitely lost a sale.
I'm a bit disappointed. I quite like Mazdas.
I used to quite like the Mazdas. The RX-7 was a nice car, and the MX-5 has always been a well-regarded little roadster.
100%.
But I don't particularly like that sort of slow ass SUV thing anyway. But that's not great. I mean, don't get me wrong. Again, comfortable and reasonably well made.
Yeah, it's just frustrating, isn't it?
It is. Anything else about any of that?
No, I'm annoyed because I love CarPlay. I want it to be amazing everywhere.
Yeah, it was off-putting. Week. My app of the week this week isn't just one app, it's 3 apps. The Affinity apps are on sale. I think you designed our icons in the Affinity apps, am I right in thinking?
On an iPad.
There you go. So I have bought the Affinity version 2 apps, which, unlike Photoshop, you pay once for, and you have. I had the original. I didn't have photo. I had design publisher. I didn't have the photo app. But I was looking this week, and for £79.99, I want to say, it might be a little bit cheaper than that. You can get all 3 apps and a bunch of other things as well, which I'm not even going to look at. £79.99 in UK pounds. You can get Affinity Designer 2, Affinity Photo 2, and Affinity Publisher 2 for Mac, Windows, and iPadOS. presume you can just download them on the iPad, sign in your account, and you've got the full version of Affinity version 2 as well.
Yeah, I might go and have a look at this actually because they've got a sale on, which is all good. Who doesn't like 50% off? I'm a little bit tempted. I think I've got some of the version 1 apps. I've played with the version 2 apps with a free trial, but very happy to pay once. I just don't want monthly subscriptions. So yeah, I might do that actually because I think the apps are pretty good actually.
They are pretty good, and as I said, I bought the other two when they were on sale before, when they were version 1, and there's an upgrade thing. You can click upgrade from V1, and I got all three for £60, not $79.99, so I was even happier with that.
So if I can do it for £60, I think I'd be very comfortable with that, so I will go and take a look at that after the show.
So they're good apps. I use. I also, as well as moving on, I say so a lot. I've discovered while editing this podcast. But Publisher and Designer I've used a lot for designing academic posters and things like that. So they're really good apps. Photo I've never touched at all, so I'll have a look at that too.
Photo's pretty good actually. I've never been a heavy Photoshop user in the last sort of 20 years, but I actually quite like it. I like to just do minor edits to photos or rub things out, and it was pretty good. So I would definitely recommend.
Fair enough. That's my app of the week. Thing of the week.
Thing of the week. So a bit boring this week. I was going away to Silverstone. I thought it was about time I bought a power bank. I had kind of been holding out for Apple to do another MagSafe one, but then I thought I should probably get something a bit bigger so I can charge my iPad, my AirPods, my phone, kids' laptops, a bit of everything if we were in a pinch. I didn't get the biggest one because I was trying to get the right balance between big battery. I wanted just USB-C only. I've tried to get rid of USB-A out of my life. So I went USB-C only, 2 ports, and I bought this Anker one, and it was cheapish. I had 40% off on Amazon, so it was £60. It's a 12,000 milliamp hour battery. I don't know if that's good or bad. They do 20,000 milliamp batteries. They do 5,000 ones. So I went in the middle, and like I said, I was also shopping on weight because if something's too heavy, I won't just chuck it in my bag and take it with me. So bought that, used it all weekend. Great little device. Got a nice little screen on it, tells you how charged it is, shows you the throughput of charge it's doing as well, which I just thought was interesting. But nice little device. Anker do make some nice stuff, and the build quality, very good. The quality of the screen on it's really sharp. It's just really nicely made product, and would recommend.
I'm a big fan of these bigger power banks. So mine's a RAV Power. I'll try and get in front of the camera. There we are. Which is a bit of a chonker because it's, I think, 5 or 6 years old at this point. And it's 2 USB-Cs and 2 USB-As, 3.1 ports. It's a 20,000 milliamp hour one. It goes forever. I chuck it in my bag. I maybe charge it once every 6 months, and it will charge my phone multiple times. I've charged my laptop off it once. They're really handy to have something like this in the locker for when you are out traveling and you just occasionally need a bit more boost than you think you'll do. So yeah, I think it's a good shout.
I'm amazed I've gone this long without one, if I'm honest. And I could charge up my friends' phones with me, so I took a USB to USB-C and I took a USB-C to Lightning just so I could cover all bases. But it was just a great little thing, and I don't think it was badly priced, to be fair. Like I say, I partly wanted one not too big. I did nearly buy a 20. They do the same look in a 20,000 milliamp one. But you're right, my son's got an old one I had, and it just lasts for ages. So there you go.
Excellent. I think we can call it a show, Chris.
I think so. So if anyone wants to get into contact with us, Rod is at g5maniac@mastodon.scot. I'm at _CJP at mastodon.social. You can watch it on YouTube if you go to wakefromsleep.com and click on the YouTube link, or you can drop us an email at wakefromsleep@protonmail.com.
Talk to you next week, Chris.
Cheers, Rod.